sometime in the early 1400s, in a workshop somewhere in Central Europe. You're not entirely sure where. Someone sat down with calfskin parchment, iron gall, ink, and a vision. Over the following weeks or months, they created approximately 240 pages of the most baffling book in human history. They drew plants that don't grow in our world. They sketched astronomical diagrams that match no sky we know. They filled page after page with an elegant, flowing script in an alphabet that has never been seen before or since. Then they vanished into history, taking all their secrets with them 600 years later. That book sits in a climate-controlled vault at Yale University, and we still cannot read a single word. Not one. We've thrown everything at its World War II code breakers, supercomputers, artificial intelligence, the combined brainpower of centuries of scholars. The Voynich Manuscript has defeated them all. But here's what makes this story worth telling. This isn't just an unsolved puzzle. It's a journey through time that touches emperors and alchemists, Khan artists and cryptographers, touching some of the most fascinating minds in history. And the journey begins not with the book's creation, but with its rediscovery 500 years later. Our story enters the historical record in Prague. Sometime around 1599, the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf, to a monarch who cared more about his alchemical laboratory than running an empire, made an extraordinary purchase. For 600 gold ducats, roughly equivalent to $100,000 today, he acquired a mysterious manuscript that he believed was written by the legendary Roger Bacon, a 13th century English philosopher known as Dr. Rebellis now. Rudolf was exactly the kind of patron you'd want if you were selling a mysterious codex. The man collected everything: scientific instruments, occult texts, works of art, even strange animals for his menagerie. His court in Prague was a magnet for alchemists, astrologers, and anyone claiming to possess secret knowledge. He allegedly spent more time in his laboratory trying to transmute base metals into gold than he did governing his territories. Where did Rudolf get this manuscript? The prevailing theory for years was that it came from John Dee, the English mathematician, astrologer, and court advisor to Elizabeth I. Dee and his associates. Edward Kelly spent several years in Prague trying to sell their services to Rudolf. Dee's son later wrote that his father owned a book containing nothing but hieroglyphics, which book his father bestowed much time upon, but I could not hear that he could make it out. Sounds promising, right? Except there's a problem. Dee kept meticulous diaries, and there's no mention of selling any manuscript to Rudolf for 600 ducats. The connection is plausible but unproven. What we do know is that Rudolf paid a fortune for this book, convinced it contained ancient wisdom. The emperor's records show a purchase in 1599 of a couple of remarkable books from Karl Weidmann for 600 florins. Weidmann was a physician and collector of alchemical texts based in Augsburg, Germany. It's likely, though not certain, that the Voynich manuscript was part of this deal. Rudolf must have been disappointed. Despite having the best scholars in Europe at his court, nobody could read the thing. When Rudolf died in 1612, the manuscript passed to Jacobus Horsecki de Tiep, his personal pharmacist and physician. We know this because Tiepnik signed his name on the first page, though his signature was invisible to the naked eye, until someone applied ultraviolet light to it centuries later. After Tiepnik's death in 1622, the manuscript entered the hands of Georg Barisch, a Prague alchemist who became obsessed with deciphering it. Barisch spent years on the problem, and his frustration is palpable in the letters he wrote. In the 1630s, he reached out to Athanasius, a Jesuit scholar in Rome famous for his work on Egyptian hieroglyphs. Kircher was exactly the kind of polymath who might crack such a code. He'd published books on everything from magnetism to music theory. Barish sent him copies of some pages, hoping Kircher's genius would unlock the secrets. We have no record that Kircher succeeded. In fact, we have no record that Kircher even tried very hard. When Barish died, the manuscript went to Johannes Marcus Marci, a physician and scientist who had been rector of the University of Prague. Marci also tried and failed to decipher it. In 1665 or 1666, he finally gave up and sent the whole thing to Kircher with a letter explaining its history, or at least what he'd been told about its history. This letter is crucial. It's our only documentary evidence for the Rudolf II story. Marci wrote that his friend Raphael Mashafsky had told him that. Rudolf bought the book for 600 ducats and believed it was written by Roger Bacon. But Marci was careful. He said he was suspending judgment on the Bacon attribution. Smart man. The manuscript then disappeared into the Jesuit archives in Rome. For the next 250 years, it gathered dust in their library at the Collegio Romano. Napoleon suppressed the Jesuits and confiscated their property. But somehow the manuscript survived. It sat there, forgotten, while the world moved on. The American Revolution came and went. The Industrial Revolution transformed Europe, and this strange book just waited. Enter Wilfrid Voynich, a character who could have stepped out of a spy novel. Born in Lithuania, revolutionary, imprisoned in Siberia, escaped across China, ended up in London as a rare book dealer. The man had lived a remarkable life even before he found the manuscript that would make him famous. In 1912, Voynich was traveling through Italy looking for treasures. The Jesuits at Villa Mondragon near Rome had fallen on hard times and were quietly selling off manuscripts before the Vatican could claim them. Among about 30 items Voynich purchased that day was a codex that made his pulse quicken. Think about what he was seeing. A medieval manuscript, clearly very old, beautifully illustrated with bizarre drawings, and the text flowing, elegant, completely unreadable. Voynich recognized immediately that he'd found something extraordinary, even if he had no idea what it was. Being a book dealer, Voynich knew how to create a sensation. He brought it to America, organized exhibitions in Princeton, New York, and Chicago. In 1915, he displayed it at the Art Institute of Chicago, promoting it as a mysterious cipher manuscript possibly connected to Roger Bacon. He conveniently didn't mention exactly where he'd bought it, saying only that he'd found it in a castle in southern Europe and keeping the location secret because he hoped to return and buy more. This was partly true and partly marketing genius. Voynich recruited William Newbold, a philosophy professor at the University of Pennsylvania who had an interest in cryptography, to study the manuscript. In 1921, both men gave lectures declaring it the Roger Bacon cipher manuscript. Newbold's claim was extraordinary. He believed that each letter in the manuscript was actually composed of microscopic symbols that could only be read under magnification. This would mean the microscope had been invented centuries earlier than we thought. He proposed that the manuscript contained Roger Bacon's advanced scientific knowledge, including observations about cells and galaxies. It was sensational. It was exciting. And after Newbold died, it was thoroughly, devastatingly debunked. John Manley, an American literature professor and experienced codebreaker, examined Newbold's methods and found them completely unreliable. What Newbold thought were microscopic symbols were just cracks in the dried Inca natural artifact of aging. His method of decipherment was so subjective that you could use it to find any message you wanted. It was seeing patterns in clouds. Voynich died in 1930 without selling the manuscript or solving its mystery. The book passed to his widow, Ethel, then to his secretary, and finally to a New York rare book dealer named Hans Kraus, who couldn't sell it despite asking prices as high as $160 in 1969. Kraus donated it to Yale University, where it remains today, catalogued as MS 408 in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library. Now the manuscript fell into the hands of serious cryptographers, and serious is an understatement. We're talking about people who changed the course of World War II. William and Elizabeth Friedman were giants in the field of cryptanalysis. During World War I, they worked on codes by hand. William would go on to break Japan's purple cipher, one of the great triumphs of American intelligence. Elizabeth took down smuggling rings and spy networks through her code-breaking brilliance. These were people who could see patterns that others missed, who could break codes designed by governments to be unbreakable. They couldn't crack the Voynich. They brought in the best minds they could find. The National Security Agency even kept a copy in their library, and Cold War codebreakers used it as a training exercise, since it was unclassified and could be discussed openly after decades of work. Friedman concluded that the manuscript might be written in an artificial language, a constructed language invented specifically for this text. His colleague John Tiltman, a British cryptographer who'd helped crack the Lorenz cipher, disagreed. Tiltman thought it might be an elaborate hoax, but admitted he couldn't prove it. Think about what this means. The people who could read encrypted Nazi communications looked at a 500-year-old book and gave up. So, if we can't read it, what can we actually know about the Voynich manuscript? Quite a bit, as it turns out. In 2009, researchers at the University of Arizona performed radiocarbon dating on 4 parchment samples from the manuscript. The results placed the vellum's creation between 1404 and 1438 with 95% confidence. The parchment is calfskin 14. Young calves gave their lives for this mystery. The animals likely died around the same time, possibly from the same herd, and the parchment was probably prepared shortly afterward. This dating definitively rules out Roger Bacon, who died in 1294. It also rules out John Dee or Edward Kelly creating it as a forgery in the 1500s. Whatever the Voynich manuscript is, its genuinely medieval analysis of the illustrations reveals that certain detailed zodiac symbols, a particular type of castle wall called a swallowtail merlin, specific crown design suggest the manuscript was created in the southern, Germanic or northern Italian cultural sphere. The pigments used are consistent with the medieval period: azurite blue, copper-based greens, natural earth pigments. Modern multispectral imaging has revealed hidden details. Just this past September 2024, researchers discovered previously invisible columns of letters in the margins of the first page. These appear to be an early attempt at decryption by Marcus Marci back in the 1660s, even 350 years ago. Someone was desperately trying to crack this code. Here's what makes the Voynich Manuscript truly maddening. The text looks like it should mean something. Statistical analysis shows that the writing follows Zipf's law, which describes how word frequencies distribute in natural languages. Real languages have a few very common words and many rare words, following a predictable pattern. Random gibberish doesn't do this, but Voynich does. The text contains about 170,000 characters, forming roughly 35,000 words. There are clear patterns. Certain characters appear frequently at the beginning of words, others at the end, just like prefixes and suffixes in real languages. Some characters can be doubled or tripled, others never are. Different sections of the manuscript have different vocabulary, suggesting different subjects, just as you'd expect in a real book. And yet there are problems. Big problems. Words repeat in strange ways. The same word appears 5 times in a row in some places. Words that differ by only one letter repeat with unusual frequency. Most damningly, grammatical markers always appear at the start or end of words, never in the middle, something that doesn't happen consistently in any natural language. 5 different scribes worked on the manuscript, all using the same script. This means it wasn't one person's private code, but there are almost no corrections, no crossed out words, no signs of writers making mistakes. Either these scribes knew exactly what they were writing, or they were copying something they didn't understand. And this is the disturbing possibility, they were generating sophisticated looking nonsense through some systematic method. So what is it? After a century of study, we have theories but no proof. Theory 1. It's an elaborate medieval hoax. In 2003, computer scientist Gordon Rugg demonstrated that you could generate Voynich-like text using a Cardan grill and tables of syllables. But motivation is a problem. Who would spend months creating 240 pages of fake text on expensive vellum, with elaborate illustrations, for no apparent profit for 500 years? Theory 2. It's an artificial language. Someone invented a complete language from scratch. But creating a functioning language with consistent grammar is extraordinarily difficult. And we have no evidence of anyone doing this successfully before the 17th century. Theory 3. It's an as-yet broken cipher. Some encryption method more sophisticated than anything we know from that era. But medieval ciphers were simple, and we can crack them easily now. Theory 4. The newest. It's about women's health. In 2024, researchers proposed that the manuscript might contain gynecological and obstetric knowledge, deliberately encrypted because such information was considered dangerous. A Bavarian physician named Johannes Hartlieb, writing around the same time and place, explicitly recommended using secret alphabets to hide medical knowledge about contraception and abortion. The elaborate fold-out illustration called the rosettes might represent medieval understanding of conception. The bathing women might be gynecological diagrams. It's compelling because it explains the encryption, not state secrets, but medical knowledge deemed too dangerous to write plainly. The Voynich manuscript sits today in its vault, the 3rd most searched item in Yale's digital collection.